What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on D's Analysis. We're going to be looking at MSTR and Bitcoin today. We had a pretty solid day today. As you can see, we bounced right off that key level that we had drawn out for some time now. We've been talking about these three levels where we were saying this is one of the stronger levels, and so is this level. And then we have our third strongest level right here in this mid level that we've kind of just been playing off of mostly. And as we came to this level, we absolutely skyrocketed off of that. That was a pretty significant move from the bottom to where we closed was around about a 10% move from the bottom of the wick to where we ended up closing. Overall, the day was up 6%. So we closed at 358.13, and post market we're sitting at 358.63 currently, but we're still slightly underneath this key zone. But the momentum right now is shifting upward, but that was due to the dovish talk from Jerome Powell at the Jackson Hole meeting this morning. So it looks like the odds are, back into the 90 percentile for a potential cut in September. So we'll see where it goes. Of course, these things are always subject to change depending on how CPI, PCE, and unemployment come out in the upcoming weeks. We'll see how that plays out, and then that's going to change the percentages again. So usually when you use the Fed CME watch tool, it's usually pretty accurate about a week and a half out to the meeting. A week out from the meeting, it's usually pretty spot on. So that's usually when I start paying attention to it more than anything. I like to look at it anyways just to see. That's when you'll get your more than likely accurate prediction. But anyways, we are showing a little bit of momentum, but we're still underneath this downward sloping trend line, and we're still underneath this mid zone right here. So we're still in the idea of potentially chopping here, but if we can get our momentum, we could definitely break back out, get a bounce, and continue up higher. We're still in the same camp. Like I said, we have the possibility of breaking out, retesting, and pushing higher, which would be very nice, and then eventually breaking this upward sloping trend line. That would be the most bullish scenario. And then the bearish scenario would be chopping and then falling underneath, retesting, and seeing further levels. So we'll see where the momentum takes us. Right now, Bitcoin is at 117, which is a very nice sign. And that's, of course, the reason why MSTR pushed up. Of course, if Bitcoin doesn't rally, MSTR can't do anything. We all know that. When we look at the daily, you can see it's a nice engulfing candle. It had a clean traffic right here, so we pretty much made all of this move back up. And honestly, it's still pretty clean all the way up, and we still have a gap up here too. You can see that. I can draw out two lines so you can kind of see the separation. It's not massive, but you have that gap right there between 380 to around 383. So be aware of that. Hopefully we can fill that, and that would be some momentum to the upside, and maybe we can find some resistance at 406 on the way up. That would be incredibly bullish. On the downside, we have to be aware of this potential fib level that we could find resistance at, which coincides with this downward sloping trend line and this horizontal structure. So be aware of that, because that's going to be confluence right there. Like I said, you have that zone. It's stacked up with this zone and this downward sloping trend line. But that would be a 50% retracement of this leg here. So that's something that we're going to be on the lookout for. And the old fib level is still in play. Remember, these levels don't go anywhere. Just because you leave this area doesn't mean that they're not in play anymore. So we still have this golden zone that we bounced off of. And if we were to break that golden zone over here, we still have to break this large one over here. Take that into consideration. And if you pull it down further, you could have a golden zone for this entire leg, and that takes you to around 406 to 390. So pretty much this entire area from here to here is just going to be potential traffic, or I wouldn't say traffic, but potential zones in terms of the golden zones for rejection. But in terms of candles, it looks pretty clean to the upside. But like I said, When you look at the fib levels, it's kind of telling you something different, where we could find some rejection all inside of this zone because they're all stacked up on different legs depending on how you pull those fibs. And we can't forget about our major fib that we were talking about for a very long time now. That one is also in the same area. When you take a look at the major zone, this is a bearish fib to the downside. This has been giving us trouble. We were talking about this giving us trouble when we were over here. If you've been on the channel long enough, we were talking about it all the way over here. And look at what's happened. It hasn't really gone anywhere because of this golden zone. You know, it's been a very powerful zone where we just continue to find rejection. We broke underneath it, or I mean, sorry, we broke above it for 1 week, and that was it. Everything else has been rejection. So it has served as a very powerful zone, to say the least. So if we can get back above our trend line, then that would be the most bullish scenario possible. And if we break back above our trend line, then that means we're breaking this horizontal structure, and that would be confluence to the upside if we can break that and get that bounce and then continue that move, because that should free up price a little bit and relieve any downward pressure. When we look at Bitcoin, you can see we found a perfect bounce off of this structure here and absolutely ripped to the upside. We still have 2 hours left for the close, but if we can close above the structure, that's going to be a good sign. That's going to open up the idea of us potentially retesting and pushing up to see higher levels. Of course, we have to be aware of this upward sloping trend line because it has been a key level of resistance time and time again. This is nothing new. We've been talking about this multiple times. Rejection all along here, and what do you know? We're finding rejection again. But once we can get a full established move above there and hold consecutive weeks in a row and get a bounce, then I think we can start making our way to that midline that we've been talking about, which could play with our primary theory of potentially topping off the midline maybe in October, November. We'll see, of course, how long it takes us to get there, and potentially wick past it and then fall down following that move. And if we get the incredibly bullish scenario, then we can make it all the way to the top of the channel that we've spoken about, which would be all the way up here. That's my ultra bullish scenario, but I'm not gonna base my thoughts on that. That's a nice to have, but not expecting it kind of thing. Now tether dominance is starting to roll back over, and I love to see that. And I was wondering too if this wick was going to be our potential bottom, at least temporarily. And that was our quote unquote touch of the blue line, even though it hasn't touched it. As you can see, it was down to 383 and we only made it to 397. But I thought maybe it was going to be something similar to this one. But right now it's looking like it's starting to roll back over and it's wicking down. I love to see it. Now we just have to break this structure here horizontally. We got to break these wicks, and then we have to break this final wick here. And then I think it's almost more than likely a guarantee to touch this blue line. And then you got to start thinking about local tops. That might be a top at least temporarily before some kind of sideways chop or maybe a major drawdown. And then later on, maybe we get a double bottom, which would be sweet, but that's not guaranteed either. So if we get a double bottom, I'm expecting something similar to this piece over here. As you can see, it started in November, or actually first week of December, and we hit it towards the end of January again. So it would look something similar to that, where we get some kind of double bottom. We hit it the first time and we come back, maybe 6 weeks later or so for another touch, and then maybe that's our, move for the cycle. Who knows? And we could always surpass it too. So don't expect this line to be the holy grail and it has to bounce perfectly off of it. Remember, it's just a guide. So we could fall all the way down to 3.7. We could fall down to 360 and wick back up and so on. Right now, it's looking pretty solid. We still have our weekly looking pretty nice. Our 20s falling underneath our 50. And on the daily, we fell back underneath our 50 and the 20. So this is looking very nice. This is exactly what we wanted to see. This is what we were hoping for, and it looks like we got it. And when we zoom out and we pull a fib off of this leg, let's see where it took us. We got a bounce and a continuation off the 382. So that's a very bearish continuation, which is a nice sign. Like I said, if this falls, this is bullish for Bitcoin because this is showing a rotation of capital, risk off to risk on as this drops, and then vice versa. As this increases, this is risk on to risk off, and they correlate negatively. So we see local tops whenever we touch this blue line here on tether dominance. So I do expect once we touch this blue line, that would be a local top, at least temporarily. Like I said, we could have a double bottom because we have seen it before. And remember, things like to retest levels again, just to see, okay, I tapped it once, I got rejected, I'm going to try it one more time, and then that's it. That's kind of how a price likes to do it sometimes. So we might get that wick, bounce off, and come back for the second one and say, okay, this is actually a very strong level, and we're done here for the cycle or temporarily. Bitcoin dominance. This is looking nice. It's rolling over. We've been talking about it for the past couple weeks now. We weren't sure if this is a real move because we kind of just been in this Bitcoin dominance era of just absolutely ripping to the upside from 2022, just trending higher. This thing was never going down pretty much. That's what it felt like. The largest drop we've had this entire time was here, and that was a 11.3% move. And now we have an 11.67% move. So we just broke, I guess, our largest downturn, and it looks like this is starting to become the largest leg. We will see what happens. Of course, this thing can always rip back around, but if this continues down, this is going to show that FOMO pretty much flowing into the market because capital has to flow Bitcoin to Ether, Solana, and Cardano and all these other ones, and slowly trickle down to the meme coins and the crap coins that people hold for like a day or whatever. That's what we need if we want to see this drop, because we need capital to flow into other coins besides Bitcoin, so this can drop and we can get our local top for the cycle on Bitcoin. And that's going to happen once we get around this 45 region. Expect to go a little bit further down, but this is just the general guide. This is kind of like the warning sign, like things are starting to flash. Like once you see this red line, hey man, you should probably be getting out because peak FOMO is here. So that'll coincide with many other things like the RSI on the monthly for Bitcoin reaching certain levels that we've talked about on trend lines and stuff like that. I don't think it's going to touch 90 how people think it will. I think it's going to be lower because we have that downward sloping trend line on the RSI for the monthly. We will be touching those levels as this drops if we get this move that we're expecting. Remember, things don't have to play out again, but it has happened, and it happened separated by 4 years. So it's happened in 17, happened in 21. That's when we got our crazy move in 17, crazy move in 21. We'll see if we get a crazy move in 25. But we're not going to get a crazy move until this thing drops like a rock. So if we can see something like that, then expect it. And remember, these moves happen pretty quickly, as you can see. In terms of the candle, it's quickly. In real time, it doesn't feel quick because, as you can see, this is over the course of 5 or 6 months, which in my opinion is pretty quick. But when you're living it, it doesn't feel as fast. And this one here was 2 months or 3 months. And then if you include all of these, then it's really like 8 or 9 months if you include it all the way from up here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section. Make sure you drop a like and subscribe. Also check out the link in the description for the link tree that has the WHOP access. Go check that out. See if you guys are interested. Trying to build a community. Still just getting started. And yeah, I'm just going to be giving you more in-depth insight, day to day. You can do chart requests on what you want. I'll have like a watch list and different portfolios that you can track, different things like that. So it's going to be a cool little group. Check it out. See if you guys are interested. I would love to have you.